In September 1994, the original Tekken was released. Namco initially conceived it as just a little tech project with the goal of testing out 3D animations and texture mapping, since the gaming industry was swiftly transitioning to 3 dimensions. And did you know it was originally called Rave War? No, really. Now, almost exactly 28 years later, after 7 mainline titles and even more spin-offs, here we are with Tekken 8 just around the corner. And while we wait for it, why not look back at Tekken's history and pick out 5 of the best games in the franchise? For this list, we want to consider not just the raw gameplay or popularity of these games, but also what kind of impact they had on the series, the community, and other things. I'm your host, Arya from That Blasted Salami. Let's get into this. Tekken 3 is where Tekken really begins. While the first 2 games are important in their own right, if you go back and play them now, you'll find that they don't have much in common with Tekken as we know it today. The same can't be said for Tekken 3, which, despite its old age, still stands out as the foundation on which the future games were built. For the longest time, it was also the best-selling Tekken game, and for good reason. Tekken 3's release on home consoles offered more than the complete package. You had plenty of versus modes to mess around with, a large roster of characters, and an arcade mode with unique ending cutscenes for almost every character. Modes like Tekken Ball and Tekken Force also offered you to play something distinctly different from traditional fighting games, while still utilizing Tekken's unique qualities. To this day, this type of variety is all too rare in fighting games. When it comes to presentation, Tekken 3 also knocked it out the park. Despite the hardware limitations, the game featured some of the most detailed character models you'll see on the PlayStation 1. And despite not having 3D backgrounds, there are plenty of memorable stages. Even less needs to be said about the music. If there's a discussion about the best soundtrack in fighting games, you can reliably expect someone to mention Tekken 3. Tekken 4 is one of the more polarizing entries in the franchise. Oftentimes people hate or love it for the exact same reasons. The game was the first to introduce walls, but more importantly, it also featured uneven terrain, obstacles, and destructible objects. The movement system underwent some unusual changes with the removal of neutral crouch and jumping, except for the forward jump, in favor of more immediate sidesteps. Other noticeable changes included backdash nerfs to incentivize offense, and the new position switch shove that replaces one of the generic throws. With all these drastic changes, Tekken 4 turned out to be kinda weird. It wasn't as competitive or as deep as it could have been, but it's hard to say that it wasn't fun and different. The story especially stands out as one of the best parts. While Tekken isn't exactly known for its deep lore or fleshed out characters, Tekken 4 tried to remedy that with a surprisingly detailed narrative, giving us more insight about the roster than ever before, or since for that matter, all whilst immersing you in its gritty atmosphere. Overall, it's a game that dared to try and continue Tekken 3's vector of innovation instead of settling down with the already successful formula. While many of its features would never appear again, it led to walled stages being a staple going forward. Who knows if Tekken would be as refined and solidified in its design as it is now if the developers back then didn't take chances with Tekken 4. Become DashFight's supporter on Patreon. Get early access to DashFight guides. Click the link in the description. Tag 2 is arguably the peak of depth and complexity in the franchise. When you combine the already extensive systems of Tekken and add the tag mechanics on top, you have an unbelievable amount of options and possibilities alongside an impossibly high skill ceiling. It's this skill ceiling that made Tag 2 tournaments incredibly exciting, as the best players in the world would constantly push each other to the limit in a game with plenty of room for growth. However, with the high skill ceiling also came a high barrier of entry. Many of the series' veterans enjoyed the extra room for strategy, expression, and combos. but to newcomers, it was all just way too much to handle. This, unfortunately, led to Tag 2 being the worst-selling Tekken, despite it being an excellent game in its own right. It's really regrettable because outside of its exceedingly complex gameplay, Tekken Tag 2 was a true love letter to the franchise, much like the first spin-off. The colossal roster featured 59 characters and included every Tekken character you could possibly ask for, including Slim Bob. There was also a great deal of attention and care put into various fan service elements, like tag throws, tag team entrances, victory animations, item moves, and continue screens. Tekken Tag 2 might not have been as successful as it deserved to be, but it did a great job at celebrating Tekken's long and storied legacy. After the unfortunate performance of Tekken Tag 2, the entire series was in a rough spot. The developers had to fight an uphill battle not only for the new Tekken to be approved, but also to make it good enough to restore faith in the franchise. Against all the odds, Tekken VII did just that, and then some. The numbers speak for themselves, since it recently beat out Tekken III as the best-selling Tekken game of all time. Thanks to Tekken VII and its continued support, the franchise has not only recovered, but become bigger than ever before. Part of this success stems from a few small additions that ended up making a huge difference. Namely, the final round music, slow motion, and the rage system. These features led to many unlikely comebacks and nerve-wracking round finishes, making the game not only exciting to play, but also to watch. To this day, it's the most played traditional fighting game on Steam, and at any major tournament, the Tekken competition is going strong. Even though many of us could make a list of things we want to see improved, and we did, check it out, there's no denying that Tekken VII is still an amazing fighting game. That's why no matter how much we might whinge and complain sometimes, that classic Tekken gameplay always keeps us coming back for more. After Tekken IV, Namco focused on going back to the more traditional Tekken experience, whilst still taking some lessons from their previous game. As a result, Tekken V was a pleasant return to form. However, it's the Dark Resurrection update that elevated it from a good Tekken to a fighting game masterpiece. It added new stages, new moves, a new soundtrack, new characters, and further polished the balance. Years of refining the core gameplay and mechanics led to Tekken V DR becoming the ultimate competitive title in the series. While previous entries all had their fair share of tournaments, DR's balance and systems allowed the competitive scene to truly thrive. From a more casual perspective, it also offered a much bigger roster, character customization, online battles with ranks and leaderboards, and the usual versus modes, alongside a more interesting arcade experience. While the Tekken developers continued to make iterations on the formula in future games, it's clear that they struck gold with Dark Resurrection and gained a more coherent vision of what defines Tekken. And that concludes our top 5 Tekken games list. Please let us know what you think. Do you agree? Disagree? We all love these games for different reasons. Reasons that might be either objective or deeply personal, and we'd love for you to share them with us. This has been Aria from TBS, wishing you an excellent day.